So guys, we have just wanted to quickly introduce you the team behind SENation, SENY. These are the people who make it all happen. So thank you to everyone here. If you are not already signed up, join us for our Slack channel. We are live. There's a channel called webinar-APR27. So if you're not in Slack, these are the QR codes from your phones. If you're looking at your screen, you can quickly join our meetup, our LinkedIn, and be in the Slack channel. If you're already in the Slack channel, we are live chatting right now. You can ask us questions. And the reason you should be on the Slack channel is because we're actually giving away 2 AirPods. The AirPods are going to be given to the winner who asked best question picked by the panelist. And then we're going to have most liked question on the Slack channel. So we're going to pick all of that up. So join webinar-APR27. This event is possible and because of DemoStack. So thank you, DemoStack, Robert Carpenter. Shout out to you. DemoStack is a platform that helps pre-sales team control, customize demos. So check them out at demostack.com. I'm going to post a link shortly, or Will or Eric, if one of you can take the link and post it, please do. So before we get started, Ali is the host and she's going to moderate this. The stage is basically, this is a roundtable conversation. We're at a coffee shop in Midtown Manhattan, where people are going to just talk about things divided into 4 sections. First, we're going to know the panelists. Then we're going to talk about technical SEs versus sales SEs. We're going to then go into the SE responsibilities. And then we have a fun round called lightning round, where we have a bunch of questions where we just ask quick fire questions and people answer quickly. So this is really to get to know our panelists a little bit better. With that, our panelists today are Jaclyn, Frank, Mabel, and Robin. So I'm going to shut down my camera and let Ali and the panelists take over. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you for kicking us off, Akshat. So I'm very excited for this topic today, mainly because I find this unique in the sense that, one, like for an SE and a sales engineer, depending on the product you're selling, depending on the company, depending on your culture, the responsibilities when it comes to the sales motion of an SE can really range. But the common denominator is the fact that it is a pre-sales motion and we're customer facing. So this is why I'm fascinated by this conversation and looking forward to really diving in with our panelists today. So I want to kick it off with just asking the panelists just to get to know each other a little bit better. And then we'll dive into some of our questions. So Jaclyn, I'd love to start with you first. If you don't mind, just help us understand a little bit more about your current role and how you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. High level, my name is Jaclyn Lanasa. I'm a regional vice president, which is a second line leader over at Zscaler. And most recently, I came on board, which wasn't too long ago, about 6 months ago, to help them build their enterprise segment, which didn't previously exist. So this is all customers and give or take about the 6,000 to 8,000 employee size. So we've been doing an immense amount of hiring, building, growing, about 100% year over year, and probably doubling our employee count specifically in this space, which has been really exciting. Prior to that, excuse me, I spent 15 years, which is a very long time, over at Cisco in a number of different roles, changing roles every 2 to 3 years. So covered a lot of different segments, both as an individual contributor, a first line leader, and then a second line leader over there. Did some things outside the job description that always kept me really excited. One of them being leading our Connected Women organization for the Americas and Canada. Did a lot of really amazing things just as a collective group to help just diversity in general and development around women and allies thereafter. And just some things outside of also work in general. We did a lot with Make-A-Wish Foundation. We did some really cool things with the Covenant House and an executive sleep out, as well as the Big Brother, Big Sister program. So just a bigger picture of who I am from both the professional side, the background side, outside the work side. And then I would be remiss if I didn't say I have an awesome husband with 2 little guys, a 2.5 and a 5-year-old, that just light up my day every day. So we spend our time, especially via COVID, outside as much as possible, the beach, biking, whatever we can do to be outside, getting them involved in sports nowadays. So it's been a lot of fun, but looking forward to the conversation today, and definitely happy to chat more as we continue.
Awesome. Thanks for that context, Jaclyn. Really appreciate that. And Frank, I want to kick it over to you to go next.
Perfect. Thank you. And first of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here today. Really excited. My name's Frank Lamprea. I'm actually based out of Atlanta. Akshat and I, have worked together in the past. I began my career in IT, so spent over a decade actually being sold to in various technical leadership roles, mostly working in financial institutions. And eventually one of the companies that I bought software from, called Blade Logic, recruited me to become a sales engineer. And that began my career in sales engineering. And I've been doing that for over 15 years at this point. Various leadership roles. So Jaclyn, I was with AppDynamics, so we probably crossed paths at Cisco. But BMC Software, Cisco, AppDynamics, now at Thoughtspot, we're a BI and analytics company, smaller, sub 600 people. So I get to wear a lot of different hats and probably extend myself more than the typical sales engineer role. But outside of that, yeah, led teams anywhere from small frontline teams all the way up to 80 plus people in different organizations. So hopefully I can contribute to the conversation today. And on the personal side, married, 2 teenage boys, pretty standard life, I'd say, outside of that. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank, for that context. Mabel, you want to kick us off next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Mabel. I'm a regional vice president and I manage a team at Salesforce. My background is I started a small software company right out of college, not really knowing what I wanted to do. Thought I would test out sales. Seemed to be pretty good at it, but I was never really officially trained. And then I went over to Salesforce back in, it was 2015. I have to be a little careful about what I say on this panel because a lot of my old SEs are here represented. Ali, Robin, Owen, I see you guys. So went over to Salesforce. I worked my way up as an individual contributor. I started in the small business space, got up to the mid-commercial space, and then I left for my first leadership position at a company called Yext. There might be some of y'all on the phone right now, but I helped open and build the mid-market segment over at Yext from a sales capacity. And then I came back to Salesforce. So I'm a Salesforce boomerang, but I came back in February of 2020 to help build out the Philadelphia office, which then the pandemic happened and it's been a whirlwind ever since, but I'm very happy and lucky and grateful to be back. On a personal note, I don't have any really good fun facts other than I have a cat named Edward. So he might be in the background running around. I cannot control him, so apologies in advance. But yeah, that's just a little bit about me. And I'm very grateful. Thank you for including me here.
Yeah, thank you, Mabel. And thanks for the context as well. And then Robin, how about you wrap us up?
Yeah, hi everyone, Robin Andersson. I'm a strategic solution engineer, brought here to keep Mabel honest. Been in Salesforce now coming up about 7 years. Started my journey actually in Dublin, Ireland, moved to New York, Texas, Toronto, and now I made it back to Texas. So Salesforce is funding my personal travel diary or travel trip. But really, I came from a non-technical background, actually studied political science, international relations, business, and was referred to Salesforce. So super excited to be here today to share my journey, starting as an intern in Salesforce and climbing the rankings of the Solution Engineering org into a leadership spot. And I guess my fun fact or something personal would be from Sweden. There we go.
Love it. Thanks, Robin. So I do want to kick us off and jump into some of the questions. I do want to point out too for the audience. So obviously we just went over introductions, but the key aspect to really shake things up and make this work is I wanted the sales perspective, hence Jaclyn and Mabel getting your perspective on this, but I also wanted the solution perspective, Frank and Robin bringing that to the table so we can start to see from both lenses as we go through these questions. So that being said, my first question is for Mabel and Jaclyn. My first question is, when do you need to see your SE to be more technical, and when do you need them to sell? Jaclyn, do you want to kick us off there?
Sure. It's an interesting question because I think the best ones actually do it simultaneously. And what I mean by that is, as an engineer, and maybe salespeople know this or maybe they don't, but you, as an engineer, you have more credibility. People don't assume that you're trying to sell anything. They just value your opinion. They think you're talking, they know that you're mostly talking technology. And so just by doing what you naturally do, which is passionately talking about technology, doing a whiteboarding session, figuring out how to solve problems through technology, you're never selling in the way that maybe an AE is selling, but you're just passionately talking about technology in a way that solves problems, which inadvertently is selling. So I think when you are technical and you have credibility and you're figuring out how to solve problems, you're naturally selling. So the best kind of do it simultaneously, I guess I would say, opposed to feeling more technical in certain scenarios and more sales-like in other scenarios. And I can give a couple examples of that. Just recently, one of our engineers, we focus a lot on net new business. We don't get paid on renewal. So yes, we have a different organization that's more customer support oriented, but we're also trying to really focus on how to land and expand. And so one of our engineers put together a small user group with 10 or so customers, and just surveyed them, say, hey, what would you want to hear about? Got some feedback and just did an actual whiteboarding session. Never was trying to sell anything, but just talked about technology, was passionate about it. I know I've said that a couple of times. Asked questions, had dialogue, interactive. And naturally out of that came a couple different land and expansion type opportunities that we took forward. And he never felt like he was actually selling. So it's just one example of, I think, when it happens most naturally.
Yeah. I mean, I can't really follow that, but I think I sort of think about this in threefold, right? One, who is the account executive that you're selling with? Are they quite new? Are they super technical themselves? Are they a bit overly salesy, right? Like it's all about the chemistry between the sales engineer and the account executive. And I think you kind of have to vibe off of each other a little bit. So you need to think about who you're working with, number one. Number two is, who is your buyer? Are you selling to a CIO, a CTO, a CEO, or are you selling to a CMO? I think based off of the person and based off of the title, we kind of have to be flexible a little bit in how technical we really get and how salesy we really get, right? And I think the last thing is, where are we in the deal cycle, right? I know we're talking pre-sales, but I think a little bit is dependent on the stage. If it's an introduction call, maybe not the best idea to get super, super technical right off the bat. If it's a new customer that's maybe not really super educated on the product or et cetera, we might want to just listen, right? But if it's more towards the end where we're hitting some security milestones or we are actually with the key IT stakeholders, yes, please go all in on the technical side. But I think a really key piece to this is those unicorn sales engineers that are hybrid, like very good at technical and very good at sales. I don't really care where you're better. You don't need to be great at both, but it's all around who you're working with and figuring out that dynamic and figuring out that chemistry together, right? Where the AE is lacking is where I need the SE to pick up, and vice versa. I think it's not just the SE's responsibility to overcompensate for the AE, it's also the AE's responsibility to figure out what kind of SE are they working with and how can they apply and how can they actually complement each other.
I love that, kind of balancing each other out and the strengths. And we will go a little bit deeper into that later. But before we go there, I am curious if Frank or Robin have any perspective on what Jaclyn and Mabel just shared. Anything that sticks out or maybe difference of opinion?
I think great insight on the chemistry between the team. That's very important. I also think it depends what you're selling. Some products are highly technical. It's going to require somebody with much more depth in that area. But I like to break it down as, in the end, for the sales engineer, selling is really about connecting how we solve pain at the customer, and that generates value. If the customer sees value in what we do, then they'll be incented to spend money for that. So I think sometimes people overthink, or sales engineers will overthink the selling piece of it. and complicate what they think they need to be doing. And a lot of times it's much simpler than you think.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, I would definitely echo what everyone said. I think it's really, and you know, sales skills, technical skills, and Mabel touched upon it a bit, where I think it's people skills is really what makes a great SE. It's how are you self-aware? How do you read, you know, the partnership? How do you read the customer? How do you read where you're in the deal cycle? And then knowing how, you know, if you are strong technical SE, like how do you bring your strengths there? But also how do you bring other people to the table that can compensate for your weaknesses and gaps? And so that side, and yeah, it's really figuring that out. And I always said like a good SE kind of will help compensate for an AE sometimes, especially Mabel touched upon new, but I think a great SE is almost will compensate if the RM or the RVP isn't there, and stepping up to that. So I think that's you know, to sales leaders, I would say don't see the SE as a way to work, you know, to compensate for a new AE. Look at them as how can they offset some of my responsibilities, elevate them to that people leadership, and you'll get a lot more than just the person that can sell or do technical stuff.
Love that. I'm getting a thumbs up from Mabel and head nods on that. So thanks for sharing that perspective, Robin and Frank. So I want to go a little bit deeper into this, and you, Jaclyn, Mabel, you kind of given a little answer to this, but I want to see if we can get more granular. So my question is, you know, I want to know, tell me about your most technical SE, and then your best sales SE, and what made them incredible at that. So you might start to think of like, just picture your you know, most technical SE and what really thought you stood out and why they were incredible at that, versus like your sales SE and what made them incredible at that.
I can take this one first. I think, look, my probably best, most technical SE, and I have been very lucky with the SEs that I've been aligned with in my path, but my most technical SE actually has a consulting background, where this woman has implemented the software before. She is a full-on developer. She knows all aspects of every single product. And I think what's amazing about her is you put her in touch with some of these educated buyers, and they can just, like, I'm sorry if I'm offending anybody, but geek out all day. And that is just when the magic happens, you know, like we don't need to say anything. We just put them together in a room. They talk about stuff that I will never understand, even though I sell it every day. And just, that is when the magic and the secret sauce happens. I think the most salesy SE that I've had is one that it's not maybe necessarily salesy, but one that is really dynamic and flexible. And that's how I view it, right? Like in terms of what Robin was earlier saying, like being able to read the room and read the people and all of that. I think sometimes you enter into a meeting or a conversation expecting one outcome, and you got to be flexible enough and dynamic enough to, like, if the conversation changes way out of scope and what you were expecting, sometimes in my anecdotal experience, the more technical SEs are less comfortable rolling with the punches and kind of improving a little bit and figuring out where that goes. But the more sales-minded SEs are ones that will improv with you and kind of bounce off of each other and just think about the business and ask the business questions, and less around the technical applications of the products. But again, there are different variables that come into play with different things like this. But when I think about two specific people in my mind, that's how I would really best describe them and their biggest strengths.
That's awesome, Mabel. I definitely agree. I think the only thing I would add is on the technical side, similar to what you were saying, is kind of in that geek out. I love that. People that are incredibly technical have the ability to flow and move in any direction that the customer pulls us in. And sometimes we're ready for that. Sometimes we're prepared for that. And sometimes we're not. And the ability for that SE to take that conversation, to dive even deeper without having to say, thank you, let me follow up. And there's many cases where that's perfectly fine. But when you have that ability just to keep that sales cycles going and being able to answer questions in that moment, call an audible, go in a different direction, dive right into wherever the customer wants to go. And Frank, you nailed it earlier when you were talking about pain, but to really get to the pain that we're trying to solve for and the challenge that we're trying to overcome. It's incredible when they have that much knowledge and they have that much technical expertise that we can just keep rolling instead of a secondary session. And then on the sales side, I think when I think about the best sales engineers, the two things that stand out to me most is just emotional intelligence, EQ, that ability to read the room, have self-awareness, pause, listen, know when, especially in COVID, we're all on video. It's hard. It's really hard to read the room, like we were used to. So that EQ takes a step even further of how do you have EQ on video? How do you have EQ, in a room? And that goes a really long way. And the one other thing I'd add to that is building champions. The best sales engineers are the ones that build really great technical champions. And those are the conversations that happen when the salesperson's not in the room, when they're getting information about a competitor, when they're hearing kind of inside scoop about something that a broader audience wouldn't know about. So that's something that I also see in some of the best sales SEs.
I love that. So there's a combination there of not only how they manage the conversation, but what they're looking for and how they navigate that, and where maybe they pivot and the skill that they're bringing to the conversation. At least I heard that from both of you. So this is going to go a little bit different of a direction, but I want to now pick on Robin and Frank for this. So when we consider, my question is, do you consider someone that's really good at designing a solution a great technical person or a great salesperson, and why?
I'd say both. I think you need to be good at both to be successful. The technical aspect is clearly necessary. If you don't understand the product you're selling, there's no way you can design a solution. But you really need to understand your customer and what they're trying to achieve to be able to target a solution that really solves a big problem. And I believe that means you really need strong sales skills. You need to do a lot of discovery on the customer. You need to ask a lot of questions. You need to build relationships and have champions, get the inside track, have coaches in the account that can tell you, hey, your solution's looking pretty good before you do your final pitch, whatever it may be. So to summarize, I guess maybe the sales side needs to be a little stronger. That may be critical, but you definitely have to have some technical skill.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's almost like, it's a left hand and right hand, and both are powerful, because I almost look at it, if you're too much on the technical side, it's almost like you're so close to product management where you know the product, you know how it works, but also if you're too close on the sales side, do you know how the product, like I think Mabel, you made a comment, I don't know how the product necessarily works, but I'm still selling it. And I think that's also the hardest thing about being an SE is recognizing where you are and how do you do both? How do you do the blend of both? But also I think that's the beauty of if you can crack that as an SE, it's a tremendous thing that earns you a lot of respect, just because, hey, you understand the product, but you can also marry the technical solution to how is that going to help a CIO or a CEO unlock their biggest revenue generating objective, like that. And I kind of say like that. That's where people pay millions of dollars to go to McKinsey and all these consulting companies to be able to say, hey, CEO, your biggest revenue campaign is not being hit because of these technical challenges. And to get an SC that can do that, it's gold and it's rare, and it's that unicorn. But yeah, Frank, you hit on you got to have both. Or to Mabel's point, you find someone who can help you bring the other side that you can't.
Very much a balancing act. And I love the kind of the metaphor and the analogy of the right hand and the left hand, right? That makes a lot of sense.
Hey,
So, and
can I drop a panelist question from Slack? Is that all right for the team? Awesome. All right. So I have one here from Anthony. He would love to know from the panelists, have you ever had to deal with an ill-defined SE role? If so, have you been able to train upper management on the value / objectives of the role?
Frank, Robin, that might be best for you.
Yeah, Frank, I can make it quick. Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and especially, I'll give some insight into Salesforce because that's really where I would pull my experience from. I joined in 2014 when we were just a sales cloud, service cloud, marketing, where now we are a suite of platforms. And so the role of an SE has definitely changed. And I've seen it with my leadership. The role and the expectations have changed. I've been in the same segment for 4 years, but the way I show up today versus yesterday is entirely different. So absolutely. I think one is making leadership aware that changes are coming, giving that feedback, honest conversations. I would say our leadership, tactics, whether it's like employee surveys, skill level calls, really tapping into the boots of the ground. That's how we drive a lot of our innovation and, comp and metrics and all. It's feedback from the SCs of what's working in the field and what's not working, combined with how do we marry that to the sales strategy? How do we marry the behavior and the activity? So, yeah, Frank, I'm curious to your answer as well, because this is a big loaded topic.
Yeah, it is. I'll say I had an experience in my career. It was more at a management tier that was ill-defined, and I struggled with it for a while. But the way I solved it was by treating it like I was starting a business. So first, building a business plan and understanding what am I trying to solve, and then socializing that. I ultimately discovered the most important thing was communication. Constantly having to communicate with my leadership and getting feedback on how things were going. If you wait too long, you'll find out that your role was ill-defined and not delivering value when they're walking you out the door, right? So it's important that you're constantly gauging, is what I'm doing delivering value, and you're prepared to change course all the time. And if you can do that, I think you can eventually make any role successful. And also know when to get out. If it really is a dead end, then know when it's time to say, this isn't working, let's try something else.
All right, I'm going to sneak in one last.
And the one thing I think is being open-minded that the role changes. I think that's also, as you and Frank say, like aware that this role changes every day and having that open-mindedness to realize that. I think that's been a huge thing, especially in our organization. Sorry, Owen.
No problem. I have one last question for the panelists here, and it's from Chad. How do you consider the role of a solution architect, solution engineer different at a startup versus a larger established organization? Do you look for different skill sets when hiring, or see different skill sets lead to success?
Wow. So I've been in both sides of the coin. Definitely, they're very different. Boilerplate at a startup, you're going to have to wear more hats. You're also going to be given less resources to be successful at the beginning. So when I interview people, that's a big part of what I explore, is to understand not if they're capable of doing it, but will they enjoy the process? Will they enjoy maybe not having a big enablement program or team when they come in? Will they enjoy having to invest a lot of their time to learn things that may be handed to you at a larger organization? Will they enjoy doing roles that are not typically their role, right? A smaller company may not have a separate customer success or sales engineer or even support role or professional services. Sometimes you have to do all of those jobs. So it's definitely more, I think, what you enjoy doing and whether you'll be happy versus it being like, hey, you need more technical skills or less technical skills.
And I would say also witnessing the growth of us, where it is like a startup, you're gonna have to wear multiple hats. But as you grow with enterprise, where it's almost like you got to be a jack of all trades. And once you start growing with the company and enterprise, because that just means we bring on more people, more resources. Where, for us, the question of specialization, how do you become the jack of all trades, but avoid becoming the master of none? And I think that fine balance is really important as you look at, how do we specialize? There might be 100 people now that can do the job that you had to do 4 years ago. So how do you morph with that as well, and think about the value add that you bring and pulling those people in? I think that's the biggest difference I've seen kind of from a startup versus enterprise is kind of the resources and the go-to-market will really dictate how you operate as an SE.
Robin, that's actually really important because things change over time. A lot of times when companies grow, you'll see a lot of attrition because people kind of long for what they had versus looking forward to new areas that they can grow into, even if they're radically different. So really good point.
I would just compliment, I definitely agree that wearing the more hats. If you have a passion for like more of that pioneer mindset, whether that's kind of building the processes that traditionally exist in a big company, but not in a small company, do you have whether it's process or organizational or programs, a lot of times it is wearing a lot of different hats, kind of running and gunning. And I think the best people are the ones that have that pioneer mindset in maybe that can take things that were already built in the big companies, kind of hand it to you, as I think Frank or Robin had said, but you want to build them from scratch that are relevant for your smaller company. And so I think kind of that passion for wanting to be that inventor is also a key characteristic difference between the two types of companies and who you hire for.
Yeah, so there's definitely some differences, and that's a great question. I think a common denominator I'm hearing in all of that is dealing with ambiguity, right? There's a lot in both worlds, and so there's some differences, but it's key to recognize that across both, right? So I want to transition a little bit and focus more on the actual responsibilities and some of the expectations of an SE when we get granular into the sales motion. So this question is actually for Frank and Robin first, but I'm curious, what sales skills or responsibilities is an SE solely responsible for that an AE isn't, and why?
Low-hanging fruit is going to be building the technical champion. That is 100% the sales engineer's responsibility. I look at a sale as a meeting of two people, right? There's a business leader with the budget. There's a technical champion. Most economic buyers or budget owners at an account always have a right-hand technical person they go to say, hey, should we do this or not? It's the SE's job to figure out who that is and turn them into a champion. So I'd say that is exclusively the realm of the sales engineer.
Yeah, I think the lines get definitely blurry. I would say one interesting aspect too is a sales engineer, as much as we think about the customer side, one unique thing is we also support the AE and we have to help them. Like we are, as much as, business development, channel management, all these functions that support the, sales op, we are one of those. But I think it's that unique one of sometimes we might be, the COO to the AE. And so kind of as much as we bring and support the customer, it's also how do we help the AE? And I think that's where the blinds can sometimes get blurry because, we're leading initiatives. Like we both got to do discovery, but how we do that is different. We both got to do demonstration, but how, it's almost like we do all the same things, but the difference is how we go about that. Like executive alignment, everyone owns it, but for me, it might be with the CIO. It might be a whole different way than the AE goes about it, but it's all to support, again, that AE strategy and the customer. So I think that to me has always been the unique one as I look at is, when it comes to customers, there's overlap, but where I'm different is how do I support the AE? And I think that's where I look at more of I have a supporting role and I look from the AE to be that leader.
It's important to have that conversation too. Encourage. Yes. You should have a conversation with your sales rep counterpart to define those responsibilities, or else you'll be stepping on each other's toes and fighting about that. It's important to know, hey, if they go into this realm of a topic, I own that. Let me handle that one. It's much easier if you plan that out before you're sitting in front of the customer.
Nice. So the one thing I'll point out before, because I really want Mabel's and Jaclyn's opinion on this, is there's not that much separation between what is expected of an AE and what of an SE, right? I heard obviously the technical, Frank, what you were saying, really establishing that relationship, and that makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons, but it's a united front and has to be responsible on both. But I'm curious, Mabel and Jaclyn, for your opinions, if there's something else maybe we're not diving into or seeing.
Mabel, would you like to go first?
Sure. Sorry. I think I'm going to just answer this a little bit differently. I think an SE is my peer, right? Like to Robin's earlier point, you guys are and gals are in the trenches with my team when I cannot be there. You are my extended arm. And I think that instead of like thinking about the sales skills, one of the responsibilities of an SE that is not an AEs is y'all have to manage the AEs. Like you have to manage a lot of different a lot of different personalities, and I manage them too. And it's not easy. And I'm sorry for all the salespeople on the phone, but it's just the truth. And I think that to me is when you find that unicorn SE. How can you adapt to sometimes some big egos or very different personalities, and you have to be flexible and dynamic with each of the members of the team that you support? And how are you able to kind of sell them into doing certain things, right? Like I think it kind of goes both ways, but that's a big responsibility that the SEs need to do. And I hope and I encourage all of you to work with the RMs on that. And I have regular one-on-ones with my SEs where I say, tell me the good, the bad, the ugly of my people stuff and my pipeline. And it's not your job to give them all of the feedback all of the time, but it's my job to help you to make you both more successful, the AE and the SE. And that's a unique responsibility that SEs have that I think is a little bit overlooked. So I'm kind of not really answering the question with answering the question, in that one of your responsibilities is managing all these, people, and it's not easy sometimes.
No, I think you guys all nailed it. And just to take that maybe one step further, the reason that prep that I think Frank talked about and that balance that Mabel's talking about, and that goes back to what Robin was talking about too, is you're going to probably be working with, in our at Zscaler, we're about a 2-to-1 ratio. I know every company is a little bit different, meaning 1 AE to 2 SEs, one SE to 2 AEs, And what you may find is that the dynamic is very different. So maybe one of the AEs is new, they're ramping, they don't know the technology really well. And all of a sudden you have to play a different role, as Mabel, I think, was talking about. And that prep that Frank was talking about is so critical, because figuring out that dynamic, that chemistry, that show flow, what are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? That may be very different for a ramping AE versus a senior AE that maybe has been with the company for a couple of years, understands the technology pretty well, can actually get a couple layers lower. You may play a slightly different role. So I absolutely agree with everything everybody is saying, because most cases is no one AE is the same as another, and how you are successful together will differ. If I had to pick one place, if I was just to pick one place where I see the SEs taking on a bigger role and being more successful, is maybe in the POV success criteria conversation. I think that's an area where it's really good for the engineer to take more of that sales role of, hopefully the AE has already defined what that pain is, what we're solving for at a business and or even high level technical perspective, but it's in that POV success criteria discussion. It's really important to get granular of what we're trying to accomplish and what that's going to map back to, and making sure everybody's in agreement. So if I had to pick one, that might be one where I said that the SE really needs to pick it, be the lead.
Yeah, bringing that POV, because they're looking from both lenses, right?
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to sneak in another audience question here. This is from Randy, but also Pollock also had a very similar question. So when it comes to SE responsibilities, where do you see new or early career SEs typically fall short when they get started? And then maybe what skills should they be developing?
I'll make a quick comment. I think the earlier ones maybe are more fearful to have a point of view or speak about their point of view. I am a big believer in people speaking up, having a voice, challenging either me and or their AE. And I think with experience sometimes comes confidence. And so that would be one area I think an earlier in career person, I would encourage you that your voice matters and to speak up, appropriately in the right settings, of course, as I would say to anybody, but that's probably the one place I'd say.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head, which is, I tend to see early people equate saying yes to success, right? And they want to just please the customer. They want to please their sales reps, and they're doing a lot of unnecessary work. So don't always say yes, like really think about, use common sense, think about what you're being asked to do, understand the value. I think, over time you'll, and also don't be afraid to ask hard questions. If something doesn't feel, if you're working on a proof of value with a customer and it just doesn't seem like it's going anywhere, start asking hard questions of the customer. Like, why are we doing this? Who's going to use this? Why is this important? Just because you signed up to do it, don't spend 3 months doing it, because it may not lead to anything.
Yeah, and I love that question, because I came from that background of starting as an intern and growing, and with Salesforce, like, we're huge on our investment into interns as well and bringing them into the business. And I would say there's kind of 3 things that I noted down. One is just getting used to the ambiguity and not being an expert, and realizing that there's just so many products and so many technical things to know, but how do you get comfortable with that? And I would say the 2 things as well is, SEs are so different from each other. So making the mistake that every SE is the same and trying to mold yourself. I've worked with SEs that come from video background, media, finance. You'll meet SEs from all walks of life, and there's no blueprint to be successful. So it's just kind of think about what got you there, what's getting you there, and focus on that. And I would say the last one, it's not always technical. Like, you don't have to have a technical background or technical acumen to be a great SE. But also, like, you don't need to have full-on sales skills to be a great SE. So, think about what makes you great. Think about what makes you curious, what makes you passionate, what makes you want to go, wake up and almost like not sell to a customer, but like what makes you want to educate the customer about why your solution is the best to help them. But I would definitely say those are the 3 things starting off, is like, don't let the technical thing be an obstacle. Don't look at other SCs performing and say, hey, I need to mold myself, or I need to do that. It's great to have role models, but recognize that every SC is different. And I would say just don't be afraid to fail and get used with the overwhelming amount of knowledge, because everyone's going to look to you to be the expert. And in moments when you can't be the expert or you just don't have the answer, how do you get comfortable with that?
Fail fast, right? Like, this is a sales leader saying, lose the deal and then win me the bigger one in the future. You know what I mean? Like, you're allowed to, it's okay. You're there for a reason. You were hired for a reason. Take some risks, take some chances. And, if one thing you say that's wrong ruins the deal, it wasn't a real deal to begin with. So fail fast.
You heard it first from Mabel. It's okay to lose deals to learn. This is all part of the motion.
Don't lose deals. You know what I mean?
It's all part of the building muscle, right? Great question. Owen, was there another one that you wanted to throw in there?
Yeah, I'll do one more. This is from Steven. For the panelists, for underrepresented groups, meaning women and people of color, what is the most challenging part of working as a sales engineer? I really appreciate the diversity of my team at Twilio. Shout out to Steven. I want to make sure I'm helping our team continue to build an inclusive environment.
Just to understand the question, it's what specifically for somebody that is diverse makes it harder as an SE? Is that the question?
Yeah, just in this role, what makes it challenging being a woman or somebody maybe underrepresented, and what can you do to be a great teammate and ally to really help grow that?
Can I flip that? And
Sure.
What I would say
it's an
is
open
that,
forum. Flip it, flip away.
use it to your advantage. So I'm a woman in tech. I don't know what the stats are nowadays, but I'd say in general, I'm one woman in a very large room. I think I'm the only female VP across all of Zscaler, and there's probably 50 of us. So I've been facing this and for a really long time. But I use it as my advantage. I mean, there's things that I bring to the table that are different, that are going to make me memorable, that are going to have skill sets that maybe one of my peers that, isn't female or, whatever the case might be is bringing to the table. Mabel talked about earlier, kind of delegating and compromising and or using each other's strengths. So people can use my strengths just like I use their strengths for different scenarios. I think it only allows it only becomes an issue, one, if you have a leadership team that is just not inclusive. So making sure you're working for the right people that believe in an inclusive, team and values diverse opinions and backgrounds and experiences. Or if you let it be something exist that doesn't exist to anybody else. And what I mean by that is most of the time people walk into a room and they may not even notice that I'm the only woman in the room, or that somebody is the only person of color in the room, or whatever the case might be. But as an individual, you may feel it more than anybody else notices it. So just act as if it's something that I kind of lived with. So.
I mean, I'll kind of give it from the other side of being a white male, but kind of being from Europe and moving over here. And I would say it definitely was a new experience for me moving to the US and getting to see all the challenges. But it kind of, like, for me, it kind of starts with, it's 3 A's. It's awareness, it's acknowledgement, then it's action. Are you aware about it? I think it's trainings, empathy, trying to understand, my journey that got me here might not have been the same for everyone else, and trying to put yourself in other shoes. After that, like, acknowledge it. If it happens, bring it up. It's easy to, see something, turn off your laptop, go and run around there, errands, and kind of get back, and it gets forgotten. I think that's also the important thing, is the action about it. If something happens, most of the people might not be aware about it. Lack of awareness, you'd be surprised how often that is the case. And so, I kind of molded to those A's. That's at least how I try to approach, and also recognizing that small things, if we all do a small thing every day, that's enough to make a change. It doesn't have to be massive, but it could be something as simple as looking at recruiting. If you're bringing on SEs, finding alternative channels, getting creative where you might find candidates, taking that extra effort to go out of your traditional norms or working as a recruiter. It's a simple thing, but could be huge in terms of the impact that you can have on the organization. So yeah, I kind of, for me, it's the 3 A's: awareness, acknowledgement, and action.
Love that. So just, and thank you guys for sharing and for the great questions. I want to be cognizant of time. So I want to throw in one more question, and then want to move on to our lightning round so we can get to know you each a little bit more on a personal level. But my last question is, I'm going to direct this at Mabel and Robin first, but Jaclyn and Frank, if you have another perspective, please share. Where is the line for an SE in the sales motion? We've talked a ton about how they come together and where it's a balancing act between the two of them, but is there a line that an SE shouldn't cross when it comes to specific motions in the sales cycle?
Yes, I think a couple of things, right? I think, and I'll just give a live example. Sometimes there are solution engineers that just get really excited about the product or really excited about the solution, and they're very eager to demo and to show it. I think the line is like, let's not set up any next steps without the AE's alignment or approval and go rogue here. Like, sometimes it's like, oh, I can't wait to show you that. But wait, we got to get power involved. We got to check off the boxes with some budget. Like, we want to make sure that it's fully qualified before we really get eager into the demonstration. And I think that line is allow your account executive or allow your sales team to do the full qualification and use you as a hard to get resource without just committing to next steps. And sometimes I've seen we get SEs that are agreeing to next steps or, you know, scheduling next steps without the core team or the account executive in line. We want to make sure that they've earned the right to witness a demo, right? Like we want to make sure that we're not just jumping when they say jump. And I think it's the AE and the sales responsibility to really delegate the evaluation plan, the project plan, whatever you want to call it, and those next steps, right? I think in the background, there are internal strategy sessions around what comes next, and we're constantly leaning on one another. And I'm not suggesting we're not collaborating with SEs, but in front of the customer, what I've seen before in a very specific example is like promising demos. Like, no, we got to slow our roll a little bit, even if we're excited about the technology, and they have to earn that, in my opinion. So I think making sure you're on the same page when you schedule next steps. And that also on the flip side goes the opposite way too. AEs should never just say, hey, we have a demo tomorrow, it's going to close in a week, right? Like that is ridiculous. And that's not fair to the SE. We are not preparing you guys. We're not setting the client up for success. We're not setting you guys up for success. I think that it is the AE's responsibility to dictate the next steps, but you do have to collaborate on the back end too. I'm not just only thinking about this from the one side. It needs to be a joint effort, and we shouldn't just go rogue on the phone in front of the customer. It was very specific, but it happened recently, so I feel like it's relevant.
And I'll go quick in case there's other perspective, but really for me, it's two lines: how the deal comes in and when the deal leaves. You know, the prospecting gets in there. So for me, it's really those two lines. It's probably how you got to figure it out with the AE and the RM or the RVP, where it is. I think it's individual depending on segment, company, products, all that. But how you get the deal and when you leave the deal, to leave it over to commercials, contracting, T&Cs and all that. Like for me, those are the two lines that I think changes depending on the relationship.
Appreciate that. Jaclyn, Frank, anything you would tease in there, or any additional thoughts?
Don't talk about pricing. Every SE will learn that lesson.
No, I think the team nailed it.
Perfect. Awesome. All right. So we're going to go into our lightning round, which I know all of you have been very excited for, since you have no idea what questions we're going to throw at you. But this is, again, just a way for us to get to know you each personally, and we'll do a round robin effect. In fact, we'll go Jaclyn, Mabel, Frank, and Robin in that order. So our first question, and this is meant to be quick, we call it lightning, is what was your first car you ever owned?
A Beretta. I think that's what it was called.
I never owned a car. I leased a car, a Jetta.
Okay.
1989 black Mitsubishi Eclipse.
Nice.
Porsche Macan.
What?
Oh, a good first car.
I think the Beretta was like my grandfather's hand-me-down.
I was just gonna say I lived in a lot of cities where I didn't need a car, so I bought one last year.
Love it. All right, dream job outside of what you're doing right now.
Something fun with kids, totally outside of tech or anything. If maybe, I don't know, running some type of rec league or something fun.
Love it.
I was going to say first grade teacher.
Race car driver.
What was that, Frank?
Race car driver.
Nice.
That would be mine too. Race car driver, probably, or animal shelter.
A lot of like minds here. Love it. All right. Favorite restaurant in the city you live?
Called Angelica's in Seabright. It was just named one of the best restaurants in America. Actually, it's incredible. If you're ever in the Seabright area.
Oh man. This is really hard for New York City for those of y'all on the line. I'm gonna say Lupa. It's an Italian restaurant, mostly from the memories that I have there with friends.
I love food, but I'm also vegan. So a place called Urban Fix, which is like a high-end vegan restaurant here in Atlanta.
Probably go Te Deseo, a Mexican place in Dallas.
Nice. All right. And 2 more questions. Most played artist on your Spotify list.
Oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. You may think I'm a 16-year-old when I tell you I like Justin Bieber. But I'd be lying if I said something else.
Most recently, Dominic Fike. I don't know if anybody here knows him, but R&B action kind of.
That's a tough one, but probably a kind of rock metal band called Filter.
Guns N' Roses.
I like you more after every
Love
question.
it. Okay.
All right. Last question. One activity you're most looking forward to do this summer.
Besides family stuff, being with my team, I've been with Zscaler for 6 months and I haven't met anybody live. But I think in 2 weeks, I'm going to be taking out the New York team. So I'm excited about that. We have a new RD coming on board, and I think it's perfect opportunity to do so. So I'm really looking forward to that. Meeting the team and meeting customers live.
I think travel. I don't have anything specifically planned just yet, but I really want to go somewhere. So I can't wait to be allowed to go somewhere fun.
I live near a lake, so I like to do a little boating. It's a good way to decompress on the weekends.
Travel as well. Go home.
I love it. You guys were amazing today. Thank you for just everything that you shared, and opening up and contributing to our audience today. We do, Akshat, I want to turn it over to you so we can actually find out who our AirPod winners are.
Absolutely.
And great questions.
Awesome. So thank you so much. I'm going to ask the panelists to select one lucky winner that's going to get AirPods shipped ASAP within 24 hours. So who is the lucky winner, panelists? Best question asked.
Yeah, best question asked.
Wait, sorry, we're picking the winners?
Yes,
Yeah.
The first one is, you guys decide who gets the AirPods. Best question asked.
Who asked the best question throughout the panel? The questions that came from Owen.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna find out who is the person, but what question? Yeah, what question did you like the most?
Are we voting live?
Oh yeah,
Just
Live.
I'm going to go with the
I'm ready to
diversity
vote.
question.
I'm going to go with the diversity question too. I'm not sure who asked it. I'm sorry, but.
Oh, congratulations to Steven.
Steven, congratulations. Your Apple AirPods will be shipped within 24 hours. The next one is the most liked comments. The question with the most liked question, and that was Chad. Chad, you're the winner. You have 8 likes on your question. Thank you for your question, and thanks for playing. So with that, I'm just going to share my screen really quickly. All right. So couple of other announcements before closing. Join networking channel. We have something called Donut that has people set up with random strangers, and we can all meet each other and kind of network. After all, that's what SENY and SENation are all about, networking with people. So all you have to do is join networking channel and then meet up with the person you're paired with. With that, it's been what, Eric, Owen, year and a half, 2 years almost, a year and a half that we have not met in person. So proud to say that today, 7:15 p.m. So we're gonna literally leave right now, 10th Avenue and 50th Street. We're gonna meet at As Is Bar. You can message me or Owen on Slack now if you need more details, but there's a reservation under my name or SENY. And yeah, if anyone can come. And by the way, Owen and I are both fully vaccinated, both doses. So you guys are safe. All right. With that, that's all from our side. We're going to have another event, perhaps summer or beyond. I just want to thank Jaclyn, Robin, Mabel, and Frank. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks to Nimish. It was just all fun and jokes. So We want to just make people laugh, and that's all our intention was, not to have anyone feel bad about that. It was just fun and joke. So thanks to Nimesh, thanks Ali, and thank you everyone for being here. That's all. That's the show. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, team.
Thank
Have
you.
an awesome evening, guys. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.